Hello, Facebook community. Sorry that I couldn't go live, but their count is still too new. So as we're waiting for those things to be unlocked, I will just do these videos until we can go live. So first off, I am the real Rachel Haverporth. I know my video Facebook last time got hacked, and so some people had some questions if I was the real Rachel Haverporth. And so yes, I am the real Rachel Haverporth, and this is my real Facebook account. So today I wanted to come to you guys and talk to you about a few things. One, I want to talk to you guys about the countdown when the book is going to release for Into His Glorious Light. I want to talk to you guys about some events that are coming up that are really exciting, and I'm very excited for. And also I want to talk to you guys about the new ministry that I'm starting to work with, like to begin, and the website we've launched and the hopes and where I kind of envision that going. And but most importantly, I'd like to really tell you guys about the heart behind why I wrote a book, why I put the book out there, and why I'm starting a ministry. I think all those things are very important. I never really thought about writing a book. When I was started to write Into His Glorious Light, it was not intended to be a book. I was going through a season in my life where I'd been praying for something for 12 years. And I had a bunch of prophets come and throughout the years, from the time I was 16 to the time I was 30 something, and prophesy into this promise. And I really prayed. I read books. I was really trying to be very God-minded in pursuing this promise. And in 2021, I was writing a prophetic journal, and I was asking God what He wanted for the year. And He told me He wanted to, for this promise to begin. And I was so scared to write it down because I had been so disappointed so many times in this area of my life. And I didn't want to have hope in something that wasn't going to come about. And I remember fighting with God for a really long time about even writing it down. So that should have been a pretty big red flag about where my relationship was with Christ at the time. But as the year started to unfold, I started to actually surrender things and prepare my heart to allow for this promise to happen. And around September of that year, it seemed like by a miraculous miracle that this was all going to come about. But I struggled so hard with trust and with hope that I was so broken that while this was supposed to be a very happy and fun time in my life, I just was so unsure and I had so many doubts, and I really was struggling, and I was going back to old habits, and there was just so much brokenness that in about 3 months, the promise seemed to walk away and it seemed to be over. And I was so heartbroken because I felt like God set me up. I thought He was playing a game with me. I'm not someone that has hope very easily, and I was working on that with God, and I don't trust. And I felt shattered because I felt like God had put this hope in me, and then I felt like He took it away. So I started to do the only thing I could in this moment, right? Like I was telling myself that I have followed this God for 30 years of my life. I put my heart, my soul in it. I knew that I heard Him. I knew that He existed. I knew that He was real. But at the same time, I was so heartbroken because I couldn't believe my dad would do that to me. Like, the Bible says that He gives greater gifts than even we would give our children. And I'm not a mom. And that was part of the promise that I felt like He was going to fulfill, and He didn't. So I told Himself, I'm not a mom, but I don't believe I would be this cruel. And so I was really struggling with doubts, anger, judging His character, just in a really hard place. And I was asking questions, and people just could not answer it, because when you're asking God questions, human answers they just don't compute. And I felt like a lot of people wrote my pain off. I felt like a lot of people just wanted me to get over it, just move on. But I had so many doubts. So I just started to write. And I just started to ask God questions. I just started to pour my heart out on the pages that were in front of me in hopes that I could understand why I spent the last 30 years loving a God that I didn't trust, that I had horrible doubts, that I didn't really know if He was good. I was asking questions like, do you really love me? Are you safe? Are you good? And I needed answers. If I was going to submit my whole life to God, I needed to have answers to these questions because I felt so broken, and it did not feel good. And it did not feel like he was safe. And it did not feel like he was protecting me in these moments. So for the next year and a half, I would sit at my computer and I would cry and I would write. I would yell. I had my ups and I had my downs. I felt like I was on a roller coaster. There'd be days I'd be so excited. I would think that I was healed, and then it'd come back up again. And then I felt like I hadn't got anywhere. And all of these are unfolded on the pages called Into His Glorious Light. It really, to me, is a love story. It's a love story about a daughter who was completely lost and didn't know where she was and didn't know who she was. And she was in the wrong place and believing lies about her father and didn't really know who he was. And so in this year and a half where I was crushed and I was wondering and I had questions and I didn't have answers, my life started to fall apart. It was like I had built a Babylon, a whole fake world around me. And for me to believe God in his promise, to hold on, and to actually believe he was going to do what he had to do, everything that I had built had to come crashing down. And I wrote it in a poem, and I very much felt like I was a bunch of broken pieces on the floor. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I had nothing to stand on. I was lost and broken. And it just felt like there was pieces all over the ground. And as I walked in this journey with Christ, I was reading the Bible. I was sitting with him. I was talking with him. I was in his presence because I had so many questions and so many doubts and so much pain. That something started to change in me during the transformation of these poems and writing to him. I started to realize that I didn't need the answers to the questions as much as I needed the promise keeper. I didn't need the promise as much as I needed him. And I realized that I started to yearn for him, and I started to really want to spend time with him, and I was still mad. I still had my questions. I still had my doubts. But I so desperately wanted to be in relationship with him. I so desperately wanted to know him. I so desperately needed him that I focused on him and him alone. And I started to recognize that I was being changed. I started to recognize that I didn't like the things that I used to like. And I could see him literally picking all the pieces up off the floor and putting them together and turning me into a masterpiece for all to enjoy. It's literally what the poem said. It's the words that God gave me. I had to be broken so that he could put me back together, because my lies and the things that I believed were distorting who he really was. I wasn't really in relationship with him. Sure, I prayed. Sure, I heard his voice pretty clearly. Sure, I could prophesy, but I didn't really know him. And I had to go through all my abuse and my trauma. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was beautiful or if it wasn't messy, because it was very, very messy. And there were some days I didn't think I was going to make it. There were some days I was so hopeless, so destroyed. I didn't know if I could still follow him. I didn't know if I was still going to wake up the next morning, because I wanted my pain to end so desperately. It's hard to think that your promise is ready to come through after 12 years, then to watch it all fall apart, then to watch the rest of your world fall apart, then to have to deal with other things that were very traumatic, and then go through all your childhood abuse and still believe and have other people not believe, and also other people not understand your coping mechanisms or why you're doing what you're doing. I felt lost. I felt like I had nowhere to go. I was desperate. But I'm here today to tell you this book is very hard for me to put out. You guys are going to hear and read the worst parts of me. You're going to find out some of my lowest lows and maybe my highest highs. And you're going to see I went from my highest highs to my lowest lows, back to my highest highs. But these are my real thoughts. These are my real feelings. These are my real emotions as I struggled with these questions that I know that I'm not the only one that asked. God, are you good? God, do you love me? God, will you protect me? Because right now I don't feel safe and I don't feel loved. And it does not feel good. But I'm coming here to you today, sharing to you the most intimate and deepest things in my heart. Because I couldn't be silent. See, I was living every day to die. I was looking for an excuse. I had a back door to, if it gets too hard, that I have an escape. And that was a miserable way to live. I cannot express to you how miserable it was to live, but I lived that way for 30-something years, and I had a lot of coping mechanisms to try to make it through that destroyed me, that really were causing my death and just eating me from the inside out. But I'm here today to tell you the promises aren't here. None of them. Not one. But I live each day in joy, and I cannot wait for the morning. And every day is a joy to me because I took a journey with God. And I walked through my pain, and I walked through the trauma, and I just believed him, and I trusted him. And I just had to be so desperate on him that I finally realized that he is my hope, that he is my joy. And the world cannot take that from me. I believe he will complete his promises. I believe that you guys will be able to be a part of that journey, and you can see the heartache in my book. You can see the realness in my heart right now, and you'll see the joy when it comes through. I don't think time disqualifies it. I believe that God keeps his promises. They may not look the way I think, and it may not be the way I think, and it may be completely different than what I have envisioned. I'm okay with that. I'm here to tell you today that I was at the lowest of lows. I was in the darkest of darks. I had no hope. I had no heart. I didn't think I was going to make it. And here I am today, happier than I've ever been. Full of joy, full of love, full of peace, full of expectancy of who my Father is, because I walked with him. Because he showed up in my darkest moments. Because he walked me through it. Because he loved me through it. Because he changed me. He made me stronger. And I cannot not share this story. I know that I have ran into a lot of friends who feel the same way I feel, who struggled like I struggled. And I don't want them to be there. I want you guys to hear my story and know that God can walk you through it. Know that that's what he does. Know that he's a miracle maker and a miracle worker. And that is the heart behind this book. That this is Into His Glorious Light, a love story in which he won his daughter's heart back. He brought her out from being a slave in the darkest of darks to being loved and dancing in freedom and the glory and the joy of his heart. And I want the whole world, even if it's just one person, to know. You can be at your lowest of lows. You can be stuck in your sin. You can be struggling with suicide and self-harm and molestation and the pain of sexual abuse, all those things. You can be under your shame. You can be doubting him right now. You can love him so much and be doubting who he is. I was there. But this book was how I walked to the light. This book is how I walked to freedom. And I hope it will help you walk to freedom as well. And I hope it encourages you to know that he is good and he will take you there and he will lead you to exactly where you need to be. So this leads me to my ministry called Beautifully Broken. And it comes from that poem, feeling like I was so shattered, broken glass on the floor. But God put me back together. And when he did, I was more beautiful and I was his masterpiece. So this website is a website. We're still in the beginning phases of it, but it is actually launched. It's called beautifully-broken.net. There you can find information about my book, information about me. But the real heart of my ministry there is that you can find the books and movies, podcasters, and music that help walk me through my darkest times. See, I needed realness in this journey. I need people to tell me that they were in the darkest of dark places and they made it out. And I was tired of watching the Christian movies in which they prayed and got their miracle like this, because you know what? I prayed. I fasted. I did it for 3 years. I have done everything God has asked, and my miracle isn't here yet. And I needed to know that there was some realness in the world. I couldn't watch these movies and read these books and be like, really? But what about me? Does God not love me? Because I didn't pray and it just turned like that. So on this website, you will find movies and things that I watched to help me through. that they were struggling too. And their journey was an inspiration to me to make it. So if you look under top picks, so if you go under the search bar and you pick top picks, you will see those really influential movies that helped me through my deepest and darkest pain. And I really hope it helps you. So that is the ministry called beautifully dash broken.net, which I'm hoping to grow to some real talk videos to really talk about some in-depth things about mental health, suicide, self-harm, lust, all these things that we struggle with, to really talk about that and to really have some real talk and some real intimate moments to really bring light to it, to expose Satan's lies and to bring God's truth. And so that is the ministry that is coming out, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. And please go visit the website and start to find some links to help you heal. Some important events coming up is my book does release. Yay! November 19th. That's 10 days away. I do have some copies now. So if you're in Alamogordo or if you're somewhere close by and you'd like me to give you a signed copy, just let me know. They're $20 and I will sign them for you. Please let me know ahead of time. I'm writing something special in the cover for everyone, and I will get those to you. If not, the book, November 19th, available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Kindle, Nook, so quite a bit of pretty much all the big places. Also, December 7th, I am doing my book release party at Christ Community Church at 1 o'clock. I'm not quite sure what that entails. I have invited some podcasters and stuff, so if they decide to live stream in, that'd be awesome. If not, I really want it to be a time of worship, praying, healing. I just really envision it being an event where we can be real, where we can talk about real things and just let God's presence come in and start to help us heal. My desire is to have a community that's talking about real things, working together to, yes, we may be struggling with some sin, we may be struggling with some addiction, but to meet each other in that place, grab each other's hands, walk each other into his glorious light, and not be the same that we were. And knowing that God loves you no matter where you are, but he definitely is going to change you. He definitely wants to bring you into higher levels. He wants you to live like a daughter or a son and not a slave. That is my vision for all the events that I am doing. I do have another event in January that I'm not going to quite release all the details yet, but I will soon as I kind of really get more of the details for that. And I should have a book signing at a local Christian store as soon as I get the details for that as well. I do plan on being on these as well to talk about some of the stuff I've gone through, and then also to answer some questions that you guys may have. So this again was supposed to be live. I wasn't able to do that, but please post your questions in the comment section, and I will try to answer as many as I can. And I love you guys. Hang in there. Healing journeys are tough, but please walk through your pain, because at the other end, there is so much beauty. There is so much freedom, and there's so much of his glorious light. And it is healing, and it is beautiful. And I got to be a part of God's beautiful love story called Into His Glorious Light. But he has a love story for you. It's unique, it's beautiful, and it's only for you. I'm praying for you. I'm loving you. Please know you are beautiful. You have victory, and you are a son and daughter of a king. And you matter.